we are ready to go. Yesterday, what we did was we went through a lot of mind stuff that they didn't teach me in college about business. I gave you what I call the blueprints, the principles that every successful entrepreneur follows, successful people follow. You know, there's a science to this, people, and that's what I want to convey. There's a lot of emotion that goes into starting a business, passion, tenacity, illogical thinking, and that's good. We're enthusiastic. We feel like we can conquer the world. And you can't be in business if you don't have that kind of passion. You can't. It's impossible. But what that comes with is stress, anxiety, making bad decisions. So if you want to do your business step by step, scientifically, without any question about what kind of results you're going to get, because when you do something scientifically, it's been proven to work, and it works over and over again. The blueprints that Benjamin Franklin used, he used his whole entire life. He had what he called the Moral Perfection Project. Napoleon Hill identified 17 traits of highly successful people, and he did a lifetime worth of research. And from those principles, I crafted my own principles. They were really a combination of Napoleon Hill and stuff that I've learned, like taking inventory. And you don't just take business inventory, you got to take your own inventory. You got to identify your strengths and weaknesses. And I apologize because a lot of you don't know me. My name is Joe DiChiara. I am a entrepreneurial CPA. I'm in the middle of tax season and I'm doing this, which is only something an entrepreneur would do. Because, you know, in 2 months, I generate about 50% of my annual revenue, which is insane. But I am here to try to spread awareness. My goal is to make the IRS irrelevant to you, the government obstacles, all the compliance stuff. I handle that stuff. That's what I do. I have been doing it for 35 years. I pretty much know the system. Most of the people that are in the system now weren't even born when I started. So I got a little bit of an upper hand on the system. Now, I call it the machine. What we have now, ladies and gentlemen, is a machine that just spits out notices, spits out information, relevant and irrelevant, and it's confusing enough. Even if you took away all of the government hoops you got to jump through, even if you took those away, business is still complicated and tough. What they have done is made it almost impossible for somebody that's never been in business to do it successfully on their own. And there are literally millions and millions of entrepreneurs that entered the business world because it's become a lot easier. You could work from home. When I started in this, a work from home job or business was few and far between. Some people that had mail order businesses maybe could work from home. But work from home was a fantasy. Now it's the norm. And things like writing off your home business expense, which used to be an issue, has become what everybody needs to do to start writing off expenses. What the new tax law did was they pretty much eliminated all the deductions that a taxpayer can get from state taxes. If you're in California and New York, you're capped at 10 grand. And there aren't many people that own a house that pay less than 10 grand just in real estate taxes. So what they did was they cut your potential deductions. They took them away, personal deductions. You can't, if you have a job and you got to spend money on your job, you can't write that stuff off anymore. You can write it off if you have those same expenses and you have a business, you can write it off. And so what the new tax law did actually made taking expenses, the business expenses, the only tax planning strategy. So it's become even more important for people to have their own S corp, not an LLC, not a sole proprietorship, because those are improper legal business structures. They weren't. First of all, sole proprietor is the default classification. You don't have a choice. You're automatically a sole proprietor, which is the worst way to do business. That leaves us with two choices: either a C Corp, a regular traditional C Corp, or an S Corp, which is what every business owner should be. And even if you have a part-time business at home, you're making 5, 10, 15,000 extra pocket change, you become an S Corp because it's safer to take those expenses. So what I want to do today, we're past the initial, be in the right frame of mind, know what you're going to do before you start spending time and money. And today we're going to go through some practical nuts and bolts exercises that I take all of my clients through. I suggest this, not all of them do it, and that's a mistake. I don't ask people to do something unless it's been proven to me that, number one, it works, and number two, it's necessary. And what I'm providing you here, people, is the fundamental pieces of every small business. Really, every small, tiny business. This is for solopreneurs. Because what I said yesterday is that we are in a different class of business. When you hear about business failures and the state of the business economy and all these statistics, they're not talking about us. Those statistics and rules and business philosophies, they don't apply to us. We go by a different set of rules. Once a business has to start hiring employees, they're at a whole different level, different compliance level, different everything, more insurance, more payroll taxes. It becomes even more complicated. But the majority of people, the majority of business owners stay small. And it's by design. When I started my business, my goal was to be a multi-billionaire. I'm still working on that. But I will never, and a real entrepreneur will never be completely satisfied with staying small. Okay, I can stay a solopreneur, but there's probably only so much I can do as a solopreneur. So I want to get to that next level, and I want to provide everybody with the opportunity to get that to that next level. So the exercises for today, and I apologize because I had a few wrong links, and I updated that, and I put the link in the chat box. And again, I'm not even going to attempt to try to go live with the chat box because I just can't do it. I'm as far as that goes, I got to work on it. So we can't have the interactive, which I'd like to do. But again, if you have a question, post it in the chat box. I answer all of them. If you're live, give me a hashtag live. And if you're watching the replay, do a hashtag replay. And if any one of you want to reach out to me and ask me about the content or anything about starting, building, and managing a small business, all you got to do is go to timewithjoe.com. A few of you have already reached out. I appreciate that. I love entrepreneurs. I love people that are just starting a business. And that's my story. I'm sticking with it. And today, what I have on the agenda, if you're in the page with the workbooks, we only have one download today. I kept it simple, and this is what I call the foundation. So we have the blueprints. Once you have your blueprints, you got to start digging your foundation. And what I mean by that, it's work digging a foundation. It's not easy, but nothing strong, no structure is built on sand. It's built on a foundation. And that's why I call my business Bedrock. It's about building a business on a strong foundation. And I wrote an ebook called New Business Startup Checklist, because what this is it's step by step, very simple, to show you the different things that you need to, not only the things you need to do, but the things that you should be aware of. Because one of the problems, and it's a big problem, is that you don't know what you don't know. And finding out what you're supposed to know is nearly impossible, literally, because I've tried. I go on the internet. I do research. I put myself in the shoes of somebody just starting out. And I challenge you to go to the SBA website or anything and try to figure out what you're supposed to do to start your business. And that's why there's 25 million sole proprietors. So what we do with the worksheet is, you'll see that the first step are the 3 questions that we went over yesterday. And if you weren't here yesterday, you have to be able to answer these. What do you sell? What problem do you solve? What problem do you solve? Who do you solve it for, and how? And if you can't answer that without even thinking about it, you have to work on that. Because if you don't know that, you're not going to be able to market your product. And after that, what we go with is, and I'm looking for my own copy, but the next thing is, you don't start with the business just like yesterday, where you got to start with you and your mindset and your thinking and your expectations. And you got to look at where you are in the business process. Now you got to look at where you are personally. And the first step to that is I gave you a nice, simple little worksheet in the handout. And it's a one-page, well, it's actually 2 pages. Okay, so we got the personal budget and your balance sheet. So let me explain what those are. When people hear about a budget, I don't know what goes through your mind, but it's probably a big spreadsheet with 12 months of expenses. Nah, what we start, it's a simple, you go through your checkbook, your credit card statements, you start pulling out the regular expenses, rent, mortgage, utilities, things like vacations. What is the average? In other words, if you didn't have a business, if you had a job, what would you have to take home to meet your bills? And hopefully, you're bringing in more than just meet your bills. But by having that number, see, this is reducing it to science. Once you have that number, you have a target. And just like Napoleon Hill's definite chief aim, once you start planting something in your brain, we have powerful brains. It does stuff that we can't even imagine. You have a brain that can do stuff that all you have to do is imagine it. All you have to do is think about it. This is what Andrew Carnegie told Napoleon Hill. If you think about something enough, if you think about something enough that it becomes like an obsession, it happens. It's the law. It's the universal law that the things that occupy our mind is what we bring into our lives. So when you get that personal budget, and let's say your number is $8,000 a month, now we know that if your business is not producing $8,000 a month net profit, net cash flow, it's profit and cash flow. If you don't have profits and cash flow, that's something that needs to be balanced out. There's businesses that have cash flow, but they're losing money. And there's businesses that are making money, but they're not collecting from their customers. That produces negative cash flow. These are numbers that we can scientifically calculate. So once we have the number, now we got to look at our balance sheet. And a balance sheet, it's the same as a business balance sheet. You should have a personal balance sheet. And this is what, if you have a financial planner, this is one of the first steps that they're going to take you through. They're going to find out where your living expenses are, what your future needs are, and where you are now. And a balance sheet is a snapshot of your assets, what you own, and your liabilities, the money that you owe. So if you own a house and it's worth 500 grand and you have a $300,000 mortgage on it, the difference is your net worth. It's as simple as that. It's assets minus liabilities, and that's the number that you're worth in today's dollars. Now, if your liabilities are more than your assets, well, you probably need to run a really good business to turn that around. Now, once we have that, and you make the decision that, yeah, I have enough money to finance my business, I can live for 6 months without turning a profit. And now you have your framework. You're building your foundation. because these numbers are something that you're going to stand on. And if they move, you're going to have to adjust the foundation, because they always move. Every day there's one transaction in a business or your life. All of these things change. It's a moving target. So if you decide to go forward with your business after you look at these numbers, and you're willing to take a risk, because every business is a risk. If you're willing to take the risk of going into business, and the risk is there's a good chance that you're going to fail. And my friend Larry Broughton said, you're going to fail. And we fail all the time, but we're not failures. See, business is a series of obstacles. Sometimes you avoid them, sometimes you get hit by them, but the real entrepreneur goes forward. Failures don't stop us. Failures energize an entrepreneur, because now we have the opportunity to fix it. And that's what we do. We connect the dots, we fix things that get out of line until we get that profit, and then we can write ourselves a check with the cash flow. So now if you're crazy enough to start the business, because I try to discourage people, they got to prove that they're ready to do this. Because if they're not ready, if you're not ready, you might have to do some more research. You might have to change your finances around. But then you just saved a lot of time and money. I see too many people rushing into this stuff, spending a lot of money, a lot of time, and then getting heartbroken when it doesn't work. We want to minimize those kinds of issues. So you know you're going to fail, then don't put a lot into it. Minimize your risks. I'll tell you what failing means. I've been doing marketing campaigns for 35 years. Some of them work, most of them don't. Until you get a formula that works, it's not going to work. And you're going to say, oh, I just spent money on something that didn't work. And it might just be the timing. Sometimes it's not you, it's the market or whatever. But you're going to have all of these obstacles where you're going to have to figure out, how do I get around this? How do I go over it? How do I move it? So now, if you're stupid enough to start the business, you have to figure out what it's going to cost. How much of an investment do you have to make? And I have another simple sheet, because if you don't think about this ahead of time, this is where you get blindsided, folks. This is when you get hit with the bill that you didn't expect. For instance, if you hire somebody and you didn't tell your accountant and you didn't get a payroll company, well, you're supposed to get workers' comp and probably disability. Those are the kinds of things that get people in trouble. So I'll give you a couple of examples of expenses and some things you might not think about. If you're selling a product, you're going to have to buy inventory. And then when you sell the inventory, you're going to have to replace the inventory. So you got to put money into inventory. If you're renting someplace, you're going to have to come up with the first and last month's rent. Utilities, you're probably going to have to give a deposit. And you could just go through this. Equipment, your website. A website could cost $3,000, $10,000, and I've seen people spend $5,000 on a website that they never used. And I'm one of them. I did that 15 years ago. I spent $6,000 on a website and I never used it. So furniture, computers, legal and accounting, yeah, you might have to hire an accountant or a lawyer before you start your business. Printing, advertising, this is all the upfront cost. So now you can look at this and say, well, maybe I could start this slower. Maybe I don't have to buy all that inventory. Maybe I'll just buy a little bit of inventory and see if I could sell it. So it's trial and error, trial and error. We come up with a total, and now you can look at your personal balance sheet, and let's say that number is 25,000. Well, where are you getting 25,000 now? You got to be prepared. Now, this is where it gets a little tricky, because you did your personal budget, which is kind of simple because you have a lifetime of history. But now you got to start thinking about, what is it going to cost me after I start the business? What can I expect on a monthly basis? Because in the beginning, you're probably not going to have any revenue unless you're lucky enough to get a client before you start your business and you get them to pay you, which happens sometimes. But you're probably going to go through a period where you don't have any revenue. And in my experience, the norm is you can go 2 years without turning a profit. And that's why I tell people, don't quit your day job. If you quit your day job and you're relying on your business, what that's doing is that's putting stress on you. And it's been proven that stress does not help people make good decisions. Now, some people thrive on stress. If you're an athlete and it's coming down to the final moment, and those great athletes, they step up. When I'm under pressure, I thrive, but that's me if I'm under the right kind of pressure. But most people don't make good decisions when they're under pressure. And that's another thing that contributes to all the business failures. But you don't hear that in the reasons why businesses fail. Stress isn't an issue. And you see, that's one of the things that makes a sole proprietor and a solopreneur different than every other kind of business. Because stress because we're the only one running the business, we're the only ones selling, we're the only ones producing, and that stress is not a good thing. So what you got to do is you got to come up, and now you might have to make some guesstimates about what it's going to cost you. Now, I put rent and utilities, but guess what, people? Most of us are working from home. So this is already paid for. That's part of your personal expense. But, and I'll show you down the road, you're going to be able to deduct personal expenses that were personal before you had your business. But now that you have your business, you get to write off part of your house, part of your utilities, maybe the furniture. There's a lot of stuff you could write off. I just went through this with the client this morning. He has a job, a good job, but he's got no more write-offs. We can't itemize. So I told him about what I'm doing. I'm setting up people with corporations. Now, you can't just set up a corporation and start writing stuff off. You got to have a business motive. You got to go into business to try to make money. Well, a lot of people have a hobby that's a semi-business. And today, a lot of people have a hobby and the IRS thinks that it's a business anyway. So you might as well, if you're going to have the IRS breathing down your throat, you might as well do it right set up an S Corp so that you're under the radar legally, and you get to write off expenses. And if you never make any money for the first couple of years because you failed at that business, you close it down and you start a different one. So these are the little things that I've learned that they don't teach you. They can't teach you. Most people don't know this. And you want to know something? Most IRS agents don't know this. And I'll give you another little known fact. IRS auditors, the people that come in to audit businesses and personal returns, they're not up on the new tax laws because they're auditing returns from a year or two before. So they're behind. They're behind. And I've had auditors that had no idea what they were doing. They didn't know the law, and I called them on it. And I usually win in those cases. I had a woman auditor that made the mistake of telling me that she never audited a business before. And when she came up with her results, I went to her supervisor and I said, she doesn't know what she's doing. I settled that audit because they didn't want me to go to appeals and have her smoked out. Okay, so we're still not in business. We're doing homework now. And if you've followed my advice and you're doing this with a professional, and you look at the numbers and you agree that you can do this without risking a lot of money, now we start talking about your legal structure. And I already said what I have to say on the legal structure. It is 99% of people going into business have to have an S Corp. So now one of the things that I've been able to do because of technology is produce a program where people could actually do their own S Corp. I have a client, she might even be in on, I know that she just signed up as an affiliate, Von Deb Brinson, actually did the course. She lives in Florida and she's an S Corp today. I'm so proud of her. And she did it with the course that I put together. And I'll tell you what the benefit of that is. I guided her. I didn't have to do all the legwork. She did all the legwork. And when she had a problem, or a question, she just texted me and it was simple. Normally, I charge $600 to set somebody up with the corporation, and I take them through, I do all the legwork and then some. If you go to LegalZoom, they're just gonna, a lot of times they set up LLCs, because they don't know. And they don't do all the extra stuff. They do it, but then it's $75 to do your federal ID. It's $125 to do the S Corp election. When you're done with LegalZoom, you're spending $1,000 plus. And then you still got to hire an accountant. So once we get up to the legal structure and you follow my advice and you're an S Corp, we go through these other issues that come up. Not for profit. You would be surprised how many people come to me and want to set it, they have an idea to help people and they want to set up a not-for-profit, which is great. We all should have a not-for-profit and do good and help people. But a not-for-profit is not for profit. It means that the goal is to break even, take all the money you bring in and distribute it to whatever your cause is, which leaves nothing for the person that's starting it. What they believe, what most people believe, is they can build this up and take a salary. the truth is that most not-for-profits don't bring in enough money to afford to pay a salary. And if they do bring in enough money, they don't want to spend it on salaries. They want to spend it on the cause. So what I do with people that want to start a not-for-profit, and I'll tell you, and this is off topic, but I actually had a client, this was 30 years ago. He was a stockbroker, and he asked me if he could become a church and not pay taxes. And my answer was that if that was possible, I would be a church. So the not-for-profit issue is relevant. I've seen people start not-for-profits because they thought they could make money, and they don't. So what you got to do is you got to look at what you want to do, like I talked about yesterday. If you want to help people, we turn it into a business, a for-profit business. If you still want to help people through a not-for-profit, a foundation, which is a relevant business model today, a lot of entrepreneurs have a foundation or a not-for-profit on the side. And that's how you can, spread positive energy. You're making a profit, and everybody is supposed to be rich, people. We're supposed to have abundance because it's out there. And I covered that yesterday. And all you got to do is read one of the free downloads called The Science of Getting Rich. So that's the not-for-profit issue. Doing business as DBAs, this comes up all the time. Now, a DBA technically is what a sole proprietor gets because it's doing business as. If you don't want to do business under your name, you register with your county and say, I'm Joe DeChara, but I want to do business as XYZ. And it's not XYZ Inc., it's just XYZ because you're a sole proprietor. When you set up a corporation, you can use any name you want, and people get caught up because they don't want to pick a name that they're going to be married to. The good news is that a corporation can do business under any other name as long as somebody else doesn't have it. And they call that, different states call them different things, but it could be an assumed name, a fictitious name. But I've had clients with multiple business names that were under one corporate umbrella. And what that does is it makes it simple. So I have people saying, well, if I sell umbrellas and I do life coaching, don't I need two corporations? No, you don't. There is no law that says that. If they both become big, you might want to do that. But you don't have to go setting up 5 different corporations. And if one business doesn't work, you don't have to close down the corporation and start a new one. You could keep the corporation because you can, as long as you're doing business, you can do any business. So that's another misconception that people skip over. And then I have something about you need a tax identification number. And my friend Pat Wiley, who does business credit, what Pat Wiley does is pretty interesting because he gets business credit separate from your personal credit. And that's why when you're a sole proprietor, it's all combined. It's commingled. When you have a corporation and a tax ID number, you're totally separate. And that's what helps us fly under the radar. You're not taking business expenses on your personal return. The only way to do that is to create a separate entity. So that's a tax ID number. If you hire somebody, or you even hire yourself, which is another issue, because when you're a corporation and you're profitable, at some point you might have to start taking a salary. And that's another thing that gives us leeway, because the salary is up to us. It's up to us. We figure out how much the salary is. But because you got to take a payroll now, you got to register. You got to register with the IRS and with the state. You got to start taking a salary and paying payroll taxes like anyone else. And then we get to payroll compliance, which is a nightmare. I can do a whole week full time just on payroll compliance. Anybody that does their own payroll is asking for problems. There's too many moving parts. There's too many people to answer to. And what you need is you need a payroll company. So somebody like me, a lot of accountants either do business with the payroll company or the accountants actually do the payroll. So I offer payroll as a service to my clients because I can do it for a lot cheaper than just about any of these other outside companies. My payroll prices are about 60% of what everybody else is. And that's because I have a system. And that's it on, oh, I'm sorry, that's not it. Couple of other issues, because you got, and this is big, folks, on subcontractors, independent contractors. It's always been an issue with the IRS because subcontractors don't have to pay any payroll taxes. The employer doesn't pay any payroll taxes, which is very attractive. But there's a law that distinguishes between an independent contractor and an employee. And in the past, those laws were pretty much unenforceable. It took too much manpower, too much work to go into companies and audit them. But thanks to technology, that's not a problem anymore. And what's happening is states like California passed a law that I believe is unconstitutional that says they can go back 2 years and take people that were classified as independent contractors and make them employees. And that creates an avalanche of problems, because now what you got to do is you got to go back and fill out all of the forms like they were employees, and you got to pay the back taxes. And you're responsible for the amount of withholding that would have been taken out if they were employees. Now, what are those rules that up until now most people didn't have to follow? You have to be a subcontractor, you have to be a legitimate business. And believe it or not, they're checking things like if you have a website, they want to see if you have a business card. Do you actually offer your services to the public, to other businesses? So just setting up a corporation or a business isn't enough. You got to act like a business. And if you're hiring subcontractors, you gotta fill out the right paperwork, have all the documentation, because they are coming in. I've had IRS officers just show up to businesses asking to see the paperwork, the W-9, the Homeland Security form. I've had Homeland Security walk into clients unannounced to check their payroll records. Now, Homeland Security isn't the IRS. So you're filling out a payroll form for Homeland Security because they're looking for illegal immigrants that are terrorists. There's no way to describe it. That's what they're looking for. They're looking for terrorists. And if you have a client or you are from the part of the world that they think terrorists come from, they're looking at you. Unfortunately, that's the truth. They are looking at you, and you don't see them looking at you because they're looking at you from their offices now. 9/11, the backlash of 9/11 is that they pretty much know where everybody is, what everybody's doing, what they're spending money on, who they're talking to, and even what we're saying. So you got to be cognizant of this. And this is why all these compliance issues are coming to the surface now. A lot of these rules have been on the books from the beginning of time. They were just unenforceable. So that's that issue, and it is important. It's going to get worse, so you got to protect yourself on that. Insurance is a big issue because, like I said before, once you hire an employee, you have to have workers' comp and disability. And so let me take you through a little scenario there. Let's say you have a deli owner making 50, 60,000 a year, and they got to hire a clerk, somebody that's going to make sandwiches, ring people up. And if they're going to work part-time, maybe 20 hours a week, that is the kind of thing that takes a business from the black to the red, because a guy making 50, 60,000 a year can't afford to pay the payroll taxes and the insurance. And what they've done in the past is those guys go off the books. And today there are no off the books jobs. Off the books is history. And that's the kind of thing that hurts small businesses. And the next thing, I still have a couple of things on here, a couple of items, is sales tax. Sales tax is the most complicated tax that there is, believe it or not. And if you've noticed, now when you buy something from Amazon, from another state, all of a sudden you're getting charged sales tax. This has always been an issue. The states collect the sales tax. This isn't the IRS. This isn't the federal government. It's the state and local entities. And it's so easy to mess up your sales tax that they go into businesses and they audit them and they come out with money. Sales taxes, if you're a contractor or any other kind of business, just about, you have to make sure that you're not responsible for collecting sales tax. And that, like all the other things, is a moving target. When you go into business, you are responsible for collecting sales tax if it's applicable. And figuring out what's applicable and not is not easy all the time. There are rules that keep changing. If you're doing business if your customer is in a different state, well, now you got to figure out what the rules are in that state. So this is not simple. And that's why you need to know what you don't know. You need to know these things. Sales tax is something that I've seen put people out of business. I'll give you a real life example. Awning company. They got in touch with me because they had a big sales tax problem. With awnings, there's a question if the awning, and what I'm talking about is when you see a business and they got the big awnings on, they advertise who they are, and those things are not inexpensive. They cost $5,000, $10,000, $20,000. But the question is it a capital improvement not subject to sales tax, or just another addition that is subject? Now, their accountant claimed that they were capital improvements. It was wrong. The sales tax department came in and said, no, these were capital improvements, but all of these weren't. $200,000 bill for back taxes. If that company was in business for 50 years, family-run business, that put them out of business. A simple mistake. They were good people. They would have called. Now, this was sales tax that they were supposed to collect that they didn't. Their accountant told them they didn't have to. And that put them out of business. And I saw that family have to sell their houses, live from not even week to week. They were living from day to day. If they didn't bring in enough money because they had to pay all those back taxes, they didn't pay their car bills, their mortgages, and that's what happens to people. And that was avoidable. So you got to be aware of sales tax issues. And the last thing I have on this list are what we call books and records. And I'm going to cover this before we're over. Because books and records is what they ask for when they audit you. And sole proprietors get audited because they usually don't have books and records. And you don't only need books and records for the government. You need books and records to know how to run your business. What are books and records? They are everything that tell the story of your business. They are all the documents, all the receipts, all the bills, canceled checks, bank statements, credit card receipts, and all of those have to be in organized manner. We keep getting back to organization. If you're an unorganized person, then you got to find somebody that can organize everything for you. Because whether you like it or not, if you're not organized, it's going to cost you money or time or both. And like I said yesterday, once you decide to go into business full time, you're out of time. And we're going to go over time management techniques. And if you downloaded the updated link, if you downloaded my 13 principles, there are time management. Those are my time management tools. So that's all I have for today. I apologize for my lack of being able to go into Facebook. But again, if you're in the chat, give me a hashtag live or hashtag replay. Let me know if you have any questions. If you want to reach out to me, go to Time with Joe, and I will talk to you. That'll show you what my times are available. And that's it. That's my story. I'm sticking with it. I hope you're enjoying this as much as me. And if I help one person here doing this, that's a success for me. So thank you. You'll be hearing from me tonight with an email and tomorrow, and I look forward to chatting with you tomorrow. Thank you.